Hello, everybody. This is RegiTime, and I'm coming to you with my June podcast, which is kind of loosely entitled Poker Cliches and Excuses That Make Moderate Regulars Moderate. Um, the inspiration for this is pretty much getting tired and bored of reading the same cliches on forums, hearing the same excuses and reasons from my students that justify their pretty moderate results and not great play. Um, and I've kind of picked up three of the worst offenders, and I'm going to address them all. I'm not sure how long it's going to take me to do this, but yeah, I'm going to address them all and see what happens. So the first one, and it's one we've all seen all the time these days. I didn't bet because I didn't think he could call with worse. Um, that's fine. When we have third pair on a connected board, um, then usually, we're not going to be able to bet with, say, second pair, good kicker. It's just not a spot where we can get that much value. But when it's not fine is when we have like second pair, top kicker in position on a dry board in a small pot, which is frequently when I see people coming out with this excuse, and that's what it is. It's an excuse. Um, I see people with hands like ace queen, and they'll raise pre-flop. They'll be in position. They'll get check called on, say, a king queen 8 board. They'll check back the turn on the 8, which is fine. And then say a deuce will reel for them, a complete brick, and they'll get checked to them again. And they'll just check back. And if you're a good regular, you're not checking back there. You're going to go for some value. You're going to assume that you can get called by things like queen jack, queen 10, some pocket pairs. Yeah, we're going to get owned sometimes, and they're going to have king 10, king jack, and things that they just play passively. But overall, it's a really solid spot to value bet. And so many players just don't take it. And if you're listening to this and you're a good winning player, you might think, wow, this guy's talking utter bullshit here. Believe me, I'm just not. There are a huge amount of regulars out there doing this right now on a very regular basis, and it's massively holding them back. It's a horrendous cliche, and it's one that if you are frequently a victim to it, you need to do something about it. Yeah, thin value is thin because sometimes we get called and lose. And sometimes it can be off-putting if you do go for the thin value, but then you lose. It can put you off doing it again. But it's just not true that you can't call with worse. Put yourself in that situation if you had a hand instead of ace queen, you had a hand like ace jack. Then you would say to yourself, I'm not going to bluff here because they're not going to fold pocket tens because the pot's too small. They're not going to fold pocket nines. They're not going to fold pocket jacks. They're not going to fold queens queen 6 suited or whatever, something like that. So it's nonsense. People just rewrite history way too often when they've bottled out of going with thin value, and they'll find a reason why they didn't bet. And it all for me. A lot of it comes from this. He can't call with the words. Whoever came up with that and then started using it on a regular basis is the reason why so many people don't get value these days, and why the reason why so many average pots are so small, and the reason why poker is really quite boring for lots of players because they just never know when to bet anymore. They're really scared of betting people, and that's what it comes down to, in my opinion. I don't actually think the reason is that they don't think they can get caught by worse enough. I actually think the real deep down reason for many players is they're just terrified of getting raised with the thin value range. Most players lack the discipline to bet and then fold when they've got like thin value. So rather, because they lack the discipline to bet fold, they just their asses fall out from betting and they just check back. It's a really shitty sticking plaster that they're putting on a bigger league. And then they'll go back in time and they'll look at it and say, I didn't bet because I didn't think it caught with worse. But actually, the real reason is I didn't bet because I was scared I wouldn't fold if I got raised, even though I would know most of the time I would be beat. That's what's really happening. So what you owe yourself, if you're a person who frequently finds himself saying, I didn't bet because I didn't think I could get caught by worse enough at the time. Every time you hear yourself saying that to yourself, every time you in a situation where you're thinking during a hand, Just give yourself a double check. Just do a double check and think, do I actually genuinely believe he can't cope with worse? Or am I just scared of getting raised? If it's the former, then fine. Do not. Just check. If it's the latter, then you need to start making more bets and you need to start finding faults when they raise. It's as simple as that. Anything else is just a leak. It doesn't come across as a leak as much in that game because missed value bets don't show up as leaks anywhere near as much as bad calls do or bad bluffs do because they don't have a negative effect on our bottom line. Our green line doesn't go down when we miss a value bet, like it goes down when we make a bad bluff or a bad call. But missing value is just as big a crime as making an awful bluff or an awful call. If we're missing clear value, it's exactly the same thing. It just doesn't show up the same. So that's the first cliche. Please feel free to challenge me on that. Please feel free. I mean, I don't think it is challengeable. I think the guys that are good at getting thin value can listen to that and just think, whatever, this guy's just coming out with stuff for the sake of it. But trust me, there are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of guys out there on a daily basis falling into that absolute classic kind of pattern of never going for thin value, and it's a huge problem for lots and lots of players. So the next thing, I have to play in tough games to improve. What a crock of shite! It really is. It's bullshit. It's total and utter bullshit. It really gets on my nerves, this one. I mean, it's an often used excuse that like lots and lots of like moderate regulars will make. And I think a lot of the time it's just because they're like really driven by ego and they're playing poker for different reasons other than making money, which is for me is the prime reason to play poker is to make money. And they're just like ego driven degens. But it's repeated so often it convinces many, many other players that it's true. My question is, how can it be true? Why do we have to sit tables with 5 other regulars just to improve? Why can't we sit with 5 regulars, with 3 regulars and 2 fish? Because that way we're learning to beat regulars and fish simultaneously, which surely is better for our overall game than just learning to beat regulars. Why not just practice more against the fish? How often do you see moderate regulars, bad players, just claiming, "Oh, I can't beat the fish. I prefer playing regulars." There's been loads of them, absolutely loads of players. You see them all the time. I can't beat the fish. These fish are fucking impossible to beat, etc., etc. They're crying like fuck about it. Well, how about you sit there and you can actually learn to beat them? If you can't beat the fish because your strategy isn't designed to beat fish, don't avoid fish and just constantly play regs. Actually, you can learn to become a better, more rounded poker player and learn to beat the fish and the regs rather than just, ignoring the fish and just like say, "Oh, I can beat regulars, but I can't beat fish." It's one of the most moronic things anybody could ever say. But there's absolutely scores and scores of regulars out there that are effectively doing just that. They're avoiding fish because they can't beat them. Fact that genuinely feel it's easier to beat regulars than fish. If you're one of the guys who thinks that, you are doing things very, very wrong, in my opinion. So why not practice more against the fish and learn to beat them? Surely that is the better way to go about things than what you're currently talking about, which is just like, "Oh, I'm not going to play in fishy games because I want to learn to beat regulars." If you can't beat, if you hear a regular saying, "I can't beat fish because they never fall to my bluffs," well, whatever. I'll tell you what, just learn to take your foot off the gas and just don't bluff them as often. It's a really, really easy adjustment to make. Just don't bluff a calling station. If your overall poker strategy is to be like balancing, I want to be balancing all spots. I want to be betting certain parts of my range in certain spots all the time, irrespective of my opponent. When you're just doing it wrong, you're not doing good enough. If you can't employ different strategies against different players at the same table, you're not a good poker player. You are not as well-rounded poker player as you like to think you might be. And then, it's just silly that people come out with statements like, "We can't beat fish." If you can't beat fish, you're doing something horribly, horribly wrong. And you should make it an absolute priority to learn to beat them, because that is ultimately where most of your money is coming from. It's almost like the vast majority of regulars, or a lot of regulars, are completely incapable of implementing different strategies simultaneously. Why can't we just play super exploitably against fish and try to be balanced in pottery regs at the same time, at the same tables? It just boggles my mind. I mean, I play on Sky Poker, and there's lots and lots and lots of fish there, and there's a smattering of good regulars, and frequently I'll be at a table with 3 regulars and 2 fish, and then I'm playing 2 completely different styles against them. And then when I'm in a pot with a regular and a fish, I don't give a fuck about the regular. I'm just thinking more when I'm in a spot where I've got a regular and a fish in the pot, I'm just going to play exploitably against the fish. And if the regular starts to exploit me, well, I'll deal with it. I'll make a plan and I'll deal with it. But my prime concern when I'm in the pot with the fish is the fish. The regular is just an obstacle. It's in the way, it's whatever. So I'm going to adjust my strategy to the exploitable side of it, and I'm just going to be playing exactly against that fish. I'm not going to be c-bet bluffing, even if I think the regular's going to fold a lot. I'm not going to be c-bet bluffing. I'm going to be making much larger than usual bet sizes for value, knowing full well that the regular's probably going to fold quite a lot to me. But I don't give a fuck about the regular at that point. All I give a fuck about is the fish. The fish is a primary concern. The regular is a secondary thing. Once, if we get the fish out of the pot and then I'm in the pot with the regular, then I can even change my strategy mid-hand. And I can start thinking differently about the hand on the later streets once the fish is out of the pot. It's not that difficult to do. It really isn't, but tons of players, they just seem to be incapable of doing it. So therefore, they end up avoiding fish, which has to be absolutely terrible for your bottom line. In my opinion, you're going to improve way, way more and become a much, much better player if you're playing regularly against genuine fish and regulars. If you're just playing against the same player type all the time, you're not going to become an all-round much better player. You're just not going to be. If you're always playing against good players, yeah, you're going to be good against good players. But when you finally encounter bad players, you're going to be so wrought in your strategies most of the time that you're not going to be able to adjust to play the exploitable strategy. That is absolutely a much better way of playing against fish than playing like a more game theory orientated, balanced sort of strategy, which works much better against regulars. You need to be able to do both. You need to be a chameleon. You can't just be that one trick, well balanced pony. If you want to make a lot of money at poker, you have to have more tools in your toolbox than that. It's something that you need to think about, and you need to be in there opening the toolbox and trying different things against different people. I don't know there's much more to say about that. It's just, it really does bottom my piss up because it just holds so many good guys back. And because it's a cliche that's just so often repeated. We have to play against good players to improve. Sure, we do, but we have to play against bad players to improve as well. That's equally as important, in my opinion. So the final one for this session is going to be the rake is too high. You frequently see people who churn out break-even graphs over 300,000 hands. We've all seen them. The green line's basically flatlining, the blue line's going up, the red line's going down. And they're basically saying the rake's too high. They can't beat the rake. That is just not true. Rake and the cost of rake is different at different sites, and you get different amounts of value for that rake. There's some sites where you pay a relatively low amount of rake, but you're still not getting value for money because that site's providing you with shit games. And there's other sites where you play higher rake, and you'll actually be getting better value for the dollars you're spending because that site is providing you with better games. So it's just not true that the rake is too high. The size of the rake is absolutely relevant, and the beatability of the rake is relevant to the quality of the games that you've been provided with. So if you're playing in games with over a large sample, you're not beating the rake. It might not be because of the rake. It might be because your game selection is absolutely terrible. It might just be that you're just not good enough for the games that you're playing in, and that's the most likely. It's the most likely outcome. So the rake on more sites is around 5% with a cap. That should not be unbeatable in any way if you're putting yourself in the right games. I mean, if we can't beat a game with a 5% rake, there's something wrong. There's something wrong with the games that you're playing, or if you're playing in really soft games but you're still not beating the rake, there's something wrong with your game. Your game isn't good enough. And the problem is that lots of people really, really suck at putting themselves in the right games for them, because kind of most people are like sheep and they follow the crowd. So they'll follow the crowd into the Poker Stars den, and there'll be like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of players all stuck in that bottleneck of 10 Zoom. And it's just there's scores and scores and scores of really good players in those games, and there is, because I've seen them. There's some really good players in those games trying to play really good poker, but the problem is there's just too fucking many of them. So the 5% rate does become hard to beat, because there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of aspiring regulars all trying to play good poker, and there's like double figure fish at best, and there's just not enough fish to beat the rake. So even though the rake in those games is comparatively low to other sites, it's very, very high, because ultimately there's not very much. You're not buying much. The rake isn't buying you much. It's not buying you enough fish. That's effectively what we're talking about there. But these players are always chasing the carrot on the stick. They always feel they're just like one epiphany or one heater away from crushing and getting out of that limit and getting up to the next limit where maybe people respect the races more, or where they're playing against better players, so their players will work better, if we want to touch back on what we talked about previously. And the problem is, as we talked about just a second ago, they're up against a bunch of players that are thinking exactly the same things, doing exactly the same things, and the status quo just remains there indefinitely for like a huge, huge amount of the regular population. When I see people whining about the rake increase on stars, I literally roll my eyes. If you're not beating the rake on stars, which is the industry law, what are you going to do to change that going forward? Are you just going to continue playing there, continue whining about the rake? Or are you actually going to go and do something about it? Are you going to go away and work really, really, really super hard on your game? Do loads more work away from the table than you actually spend time playing, so you become some like really, really incredibly good player that can crush really tough games? Or are you going to go and, you know what, say to yourselves, I'd rather go somewhere else, maybe play more, enjoy the actual poker more? Because I mean, these podcasts are aimed at recreational players. Recreational players maybe don't want to spend 15 hours a week in the lab and 10 hours a week playing. Or are you going to like prepared to do that? You know, if you're 25 hours a week to play, are you prepared to spend 3/5 of it in the lab as a recreational player? Probably not. Or are you going to say, you know what, I'm just going to go and find somewhere where perhaps I pay more rake, but I get a better product for what I'm paying. I'm going to pay a premium on the rake, but for that premium, I'm going to be put into premium games. That doesn't mean saying not working on your game. We're not saying we're not going to work on our games. That is just saying to ourselves, yep, I'm prepared to increase my rate costs because I think it will increase my profitability. That might sound alien to you, but that's absolutely the decision I made quite a while ago when I stopped playing on Poker Stars and iPoker. I made the decision to play on sites like AAA and Sky, which do charge a premium rake. But for that premium rake, I am finding myself in premium games. And I think you'd be way better served or many, many players would be way better served to actually find another site where they're paying a higher premium on the rake and actually therefore putting themselves in situations where they can find enough players that are worse than them for them to be able to become a solid, consistent winning player. Most of you won't do that because you're too raw, you're too rigid in what you're doing. But for those of you that do get away, it will end up being a lot better for you. I mean, I've spoke to maybe in 2 years of doing the coaching, mentoring, call it what you will, the amount of players that I've managed to prize away from the hardest sites, encourage them to go and play on the softest sites, and then they haven't needed much coaching from me because they've had the latent ability. And they've just set off. People who've moved from ACR to Bovada, people who've moved from Stars to AAA, people who've moved from AAA to Sky. All these people have just found massive improvements in their profitability without that much extra help from me. A lot of players just need the nudge to go and find easy games because a lot of the stuff I help people with isn't necessarily the technical side of poker. The actual act of playing poker is one of the smallest parts of being a poker player, because if you're not doing the rest of it right, if you're not finding beatable games, if you're not regularly putting yourself in situations where you're significantly plus EV at a table, it doesn't matter how good you are at actual poker, you're not gonna make much of a profit. Just because you might well be sitting listening to this and you might know You might have better frequencies than me in every single thing you do. You technically could easily be a way better poker player than me. I wouldn't deny that for a second. I make no claims to be an exceptional poker player. What I do make a claim to is I'm exceptional at finding good situations. So if you're exceptional at everything else, but you're really shit at finding good situations for yourself, you're not going to make your poker pay. You're eventually going to get bored of it and you're going to find something else to do. And how many promising players are just getting ruined by that? I mean, there's just loads of you, absolutely loads of you. So you need to be able to just like tear yourself away from what everyone else is doing and just do something a little bit different. So do yourself a favour. If you have been one of these guys who produces a graph that flatlines, week in, week out, month in, month out, just break that cycle. Just go somewhere, find some fish, pay a higher rate to find bigger fish. It's the right thing to do. Just be happy to pay a higher rate for that privilege. Don't be a slave to the sites that are just like pushing minuscule hourly rates onto you while you're paying a fucking ton in rake. It breaks my heart that people are playing 10 and L on PokerStars, maybe paying $6-7 an hour in rake and maybe making $2 an hour. I mean, how can that be right? How can it be right that your rake bill is double or triple your hourly rate? I mean, come on, that just can't be right. If you're in that situation, go and find somewhere else, increase your rate, but increase your hourly with it. I mean, I'd much rather pay $10 an hour rake and have an $8 an hour hourly for myself than pay $6 an hour rake and only have a $3 hourly. It makes sense, but people just don't see it. If a site can't provide you with games you can beat handsomely after paying your rake, then their rake is too high for their products, in my opinion. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you're not beating like a low rake on a tough site, that you wouldn't beat a higher rake on a softer site. So just bear that in mind. If you are one of these guys who's like green line flat lines, just give yourself a break. If you're not in the UK, your options are a little bit limited. So if you're not in the UK, the US or Canada, you don't have Sky and Bovada, but you still have AAA. You still have Unibet. There's alternatives to Party Poker and to to Stars, which are like easily an iPoker, which are easily like the three reggiest sites with the lowest rake, but also people have the lowest win rates. So there we go. I'm aware that I've rambled a little bit towards the end there, but I think there are three really common cliches that if you can just overcome them and just think about the things we talked about in here, I genuinely believe you'll end up being a more profitable player before it. And if you are making a profit, you're going to stick at the game a lot longer. I know lots and lots of players who come to me and they just get bored. They'll book 3 sessions and then after one session they just get bored of poker. They just find it's futile and then eventually I'll convince them to rip themselves away from it and then they'll just take off and they'll go on a crushing run. Be that guy. Be that guy that's just saying, you know what, I'm going to break this cycle and I'm going to break it by doing something relatively radical compared to my peers. And hopefully then you can come back to me in a few months' time and say, you know what, I'm really going to listen to this podcast. Some of you guys are going to come back and really hate on this. I get it. I'm going to get quite a bit of hate for this podcast because I'm challenging popularly held views. But for those guys who can get past that, hopefully if I just touch 5 or 10% of the people who watch this and they make a progress, it's been worth doing. So thank you for listening. I'll be back in July. If you have any questions that's come up from here, if you just want to call me a prick, whatever, I don't care, please leave comments on YouTube or on Reddit or in Facebook, and I'll reply to the ones that are constructive. If you just want to call me a prick, yeah, I'll probably just put a smiley face to you. So thanks for that. Take care, everybody. Have a great month, and we'll see you in July.